So Cameron, a lot of entrepreneurs brag about having certain top line revenues. And I know last year in 2023, your company, Green Mango Pest Control, had 24 million in top line revenue. That's, first of all, congratulations. That's pretty
Thank you.
amazing. But I think the dirty secret is that we can brag on these top lines, but it's how much money did we keep that really matters. So I know you have a strong opinion about this top line versus bottom line. What do you think about that?
Yeah, my biggest thing is there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there. And as an entrepreneur, you're wanting to, your whole thing, at least for me when I started the company, was that a lot of it came from wanting to feel validated and feel like I'm okay. So as a business owner, you're out there and there's a lot of people that don't want you to succeed, and that's a problem. But the thing is, and so we're wanting to boast about, these things that we're doing, and no one wants to talk about what you're actually making. And so when I consult companies and we get into, the first, they come to meet me and they're like, hey, I did $5 million in revenue or 10 million. And, they're trying to show off. But then when we say, hey, well, what was your bottom line? What was your EBITDA margin number? What did you do there? And then they just kind of 3 to 5%. And it's like, hey, that's not embarrassing, but let's help you focus on that, because who cares if you did 20 million, 30 million, 50 million? Like, let's get down to that bottom number and help you be more efficient. Because here's the thing, and we've talked about this before with a lot of people, is that it's better to have a company doing $5 million in revenue, but 25 to 30% margins, which is where most service companies, need to be. Anything above 20 is great. But if you can be up north of 25 to 30%, like, you're really running efficiently. You much rather have a company doing those margins than a company doing 10 to 15 at 5%. More headache, more liability, more stress, all the things that come with it. And so it's like, hey, let's help you live a great life, but increase your profit margins.
So you can't see it on my camera right now in my office, but on the wall hanging over here on one of my walls and then another wall,
yeah,
one of the companies I own has been on the Inc. 5000 list twice as one of the fastest growing privately held companies.
Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Thank you. But the dirty secret of the Inc. 5000 list is that they're not paying attention to the bottom line. Right. Well, when we hit those two milestones, I think it was in 18 and 19 is when we hit those. Those are great years. And those were, frankly, two of my best years financially, personally.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people on that list that had a top line of, I don't know, it could be 20 million, 100 million. It didn't matter. We were still in the 7-figure range. You've eclipsed us by a few multiples. So congratulations. But when we hit that, we had, I think our EBITDA was probably close to 30%. So we were right there to the range where you are. So we were doing pretty good.
Yeah.
But man, there were people on that list doing $100 million a year that probably lost money.
Yeah.
And yet we praise them for that. Why do you think the entrepreneurial and business culture praises top line and almost nobody talks about bottom line?
Because that's what sounds good. And again, going back to, we're all wanting to know if we're okay, and we're all wanting to act like we're okay, when deep down almost every entrepreneur is struggling or frustrated or stressed out with something going on. And that's why, on my podcast, I try and be as real as I can. It's like, hey guys, I know that this is hard. I understand that, there's a lot of stresses with being a business owner. Like, let's talk about it. I understand that most people aren't at the profit margin that they want to be at. So instead of like trying to act all tough and, we're okay with our ego engaged, it's like, let's break it down and let's help each other out here and let's learn from each other. And that's why I'm a huge advocate of, mentorship, and always finding someone that's, walked the path that you want to walk. And, if you've already walked a path that someone else wants to walk, whether you're doing 5 million or 10 million, like, help those people too. Because as you go back and think about as you're helping those people, let's say you're doing $10 million in revenue and you're helping someone that's at 5, like, you're going to go back and recount what you're doing at 5 and probably remember some of those things that you were doing that helped you out. And, so everyone's benefiting. You're helping that guy get from 5 to 10. You're remembering some of the things that got you from 5 to 10. And then if you have a mentor that's at 15 to 20, you're learning from him as well.
So, Cameron, how old are you?
I just turned 36.
36 years old. Well, you look younger than that. So
thank you.
You're taking good care of yourself. And if, by the way, if you're not watching this on YouTube, you need to go check this out. The Real Jason Duncan on YouTube. So youtube.com/the Real Jason Duncan. There's a playlist specifically for the root of all success. We're going to be starting our own podcast channel at some point, but either way, it's on there. You can go check it out. And I'm interviewing Cameron Bawden today. He's the owner of Green Mango Pest Control you're in Arizona, right?
I'm in Arizona.
What city are you in?
So our office is in Chandler. We just built a house in Queen Creek out here. So yeah.
What big city is that close to? I don't know.
So we're like Arizona. 30 minutes east of Phoenix.
Okay. Gotcha. So if you are in that area and you need pest control, the Green Mango Pest Control is the company that you need to look up, and it's greenmangopest.com. You can check them out. But so Cameron, at 36 years old, you started this company when did you start it? In 2010? Is that when you started it?
2010, yep.
So that's 14 years ago. So you were early 20s, right?
Yeah.
I guess early to mid 20s when you started the company. Why pest control?
I had my whole life planned for me up until basically when I got home from my mission that I served for my church. So when I went to, when I say like my whole life plan, like, hey, you're going to get your Eagle Scout. You're going to, obviously go on a mission for your church. That was a huge milestone for me, right? And my family. I wanted to do real estate actually. So in high school, I went and got all my aviation licenses, single engine, multi-engine, instrument, and helicopter, because my dad did real estate. And what was so cool is I saw that my dad was making money flying helicopters with investors, showing them raw land. And so my whole goal was, okay, get my real estate license before I leave on my mission, which you leave on your mission at 19, have all the aviation licenses. Well, I left in 2007. When I got home in 2009, it's a 2-year mission. The real estate market was absolutely horrible if you had no money, which I didn't. And my dad basically retired. And when I got home, he was just like, hey, you got to figure it out. Not in like a rude way, but just like, hey, this this is over. I don't really have much for you. And that was like the loneliest time of my life, because again, like everything was planned up until I was 21 years old. And now it's like, hey, you were going to do this career, go figure it out. I got recruited to go sell pest control for another company, Moxie. And long story short, decided not to go out that summer. And, I started a mobile detailing company and quickly realized I didn't want to wash cars in Arizona summer for my whole life, making $20 a car. And my buddy got home from selling. He went out and sold, and he's like, hey, let's start this pest control company. And by that time, when I was recruiting for Moxie before that summer, I realized that like there's actually money in pest control. Like the owner was giving us his credit card and just saying, hey, I don't care how much you guys spend, just make sure that there's guys knocking doors April 1st. So like we were putting money up, in the helicopter and the airplane, flying all over, between here, California, Utah, holding 3-on-3 tournaments, going out to these nice dinners, just, so I was like, dang, this is crazy. Anyways, my buddy talked me into starting this company. And if you would have told me I could have sold or been worth what I am today, I would have laughed at you, because when I just started, it was like, hey, I'm going to make hopefully $200,000 a year and be able to provide for my family. Well, 3 years ago, no, it's been 4 years ago, I turned down an offer for $60 million because I just felt like there was more in the tank. And I'm so glad I did, because obviously that was when we were doing about $15 million in revenue. We've increased it by 9 million in the past few years. And like, this is just a train that's not stopping, because we care about quality. We care about service.
So there's a lot of people that play at the midline of pest control services, and they're doing okay. Like you said, that the owner's probably making maybe 300, 400, maybe $500,000 a year.
Yeah.
The company's doing well, but they're not killing it. And then there's other companies that are below that midline that the owner might be pulling out 100, 150, but they just can't figure out how to get enough techs hired to service enough people. What's the secret? Why have you been able to do it when so many others haven't?
Man, well, people laugh when I say, not laugh, but they're like, really? Like, that's it? We stayed true to our service. When we came into the industry in 2010, we were competing against like the nasty I hate to say it, but like Burns Pest Control. You got this overweight guy with a beard. No offense, I love your beard, man, but it's like it was long. He was overweight. He was coming in the nasty van. There was an oil stain in the driveway. You know what I mean? It's just a dirty industry. He was in and out with a hand canister for 5 minutes. So when we started, we're like, hey, we're going to do things differently. But not only are we going to look differently, like we're going to service these homes differently. We're the first company to guarantee scorpion control, which is a big deal in Arizona. Like no one guarantees scorpion control because it's almost impossible to take care of them. But we did. And so we came up with this service that basically was like, hey, if we were going to treat our grandma every single day, like how would we want to treat her home? And we came up with that. And it was a truck mounted power sprayer that put out 10 to 15 gallons of product. The industry average is 2 to 3 gallons with a backpack. So we're putting six times the product on the home. Sometimes at these houses, we're spending on average 30 minutes at the home. Everyone else is spending 5 to 7 minutes. And then we're doing the little things, picking up, taking care of the spider webs and all that stuff. And so we created what we called, I'm wearing the shirt today, a premium service. And we just stayed true to our service. We didn't overload our technicians at the time. The normal route would hold about 18 to 20 stops per technician. That's what all the companies were doing, all of our competitors. We capped it at about 13 to 15. And, when you're paying a technician hourly wage, the difference between 4 to 5 extra stops on a route is the difference between you being a profitable company or not. I didn't take money from Green Mango for the first 6 years, and we can get into that if you want. But basically, I reinvested everything. And I say that because like we weren't focused on the bottom line. We were just trying to get, hey, we want to be at 5 million, 6 million, 7 million, and we weren't making any money. And the problem is that I could have just said, hey, let's go down to 5 minutes. Let's go down to 18, 20 stops on a route, and I can be profitable like that. But I didn't. And then we had an amazing referral program. So with having an amazing service, an amazing referral program, people just kept referring us. And so I always like to boast, we spend a couple $1 million a year on marketing. And no matter where we spend it, up until last year, because we just started spending so much more money on Google, customer referral was our leading source of new customers above anything else, radio, billboard, all that.
So you got into pest control because
you're like, let me rewind here for a minute.
Yeah, well, I want to make sure I get it because it's a pretty cool story. So you got into pest control because you just got into selling for somebody else. That guy demonstrated that there was a ton of money in it, and a friend of yours said, "Hey, I think you ought to start a company." Who's that guy? Who's that person?
So he's my business partner, Dusty, and he's the branding guy. And that, sorry, I could go off on tangents about partners, but I'm not a branding guy. I'm not the creative. I'm the systems and processes guy. And he was the branding guy. He said, let's name this company Green Mango. I said, you're crazy. That's the dumbest name I've ever heard of. Well, it stuck, people love it. So he's a genius. But yeah, I started with Dusty. He taught me how to sell door to door. Before this, I never worked for anyone in my whole life. The only door to door I've done is in religion, and it's completely different. Selling religion and selling pest control, that's not even in the same arena.
So are you Mormon? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
All right. So as a Mormon, you do your mission and you knocking on doors every day, selling your brand of religion, as you said. So right. What was harder, selling pest control or selling
pest religion? Control is so much easier, man.
Yeah, so this is a funny story because I work out of my home. This is my home studio. So I was talking on the phone yesterday, and I looked out the window and I saw 2 Mormons that just had stepped off the porch of my neighbor's house. I'm like, man, I hope they don't knock on my door.
Come on, man.
Because I didn't have time. I don't have time to deal with this.
Here's a little tip, man. They have to do community service every single day, so put them to work for you.
All right. Well, next time I say, hey, can you take care of bugs? Can you take care of my bugs issue? So it's easier to sell pest control because people know, they understand what that is, and it's not a controversial topic.
Right.
But still, I'm amazed at 24 million in revenue. Not to mention the fact that you talked about the bottom line being much more important, which is what we led the show with, and your EBITDA is somewhere around 28%, which is phenomenal. But how many people in the pest control industry hit that? Like, what percentage are you at? Are you at the top 1%, top 0.5%? Where are you at in the pest control industry?
I don't like to boast, but I do like to share numbers so people are aware of what's going on. I don't get involved in like the politics of of pest control in everyone's business. I think that's been a large part of my success, is that I've just put my head down and gone to work. So to be honest, I really don't know what most pest control companies are at. The ones that I have communicated with, I mean, they're nowhere near that. A door knocking company, which is most big pest control companies are founded on door knocking, they're under 20%. So when I tell people we're at 28%, I mean, there's certain times of the year in the summer, which is our heaviest, like overtime, heaviest technician, heaviest chemical expense, we hit 35%. So we'll average 28 on the year, but we hit 35% in the summer. And that's just because we know, again, going back, we know our numbers. I have this accounting team that's absolutely phenomenal. I spend over $500,000 to have great data a year and to know my numbers. We went from 20% margins 2 years ago, we were doing this 3 years ago. We were about 20% EBITDA margins. And I hired this amazing CFO that came in and just cleaned the books. He took a year to clean up the books. In the past 2 years, we've just been getting better and better at knowing our numbers and increasing that bottom line. And that's what's helped us rise that 8%. And so anyone out there that doesn't have a strong accounting team or know their numbers, like you're missing out, man. Like, honestly, you're making a mistake as a business owner.
Let's take a quick break to thank our amazing sponsors for making this podcast possible.
You know that sinking feeling when you're waiting on an urgent payment to come through? The one that you needed in your account yesterday to pay your guys for the last job and start buying materials for the next one? Yeah, you know that feeling. It's the feeling of a cash flow crisis, and it's a sign that you should be banking with Relay. Relay is an all-in-one banking and money management platform that puts you in complete control of your cash flow, all from your smartphone with no monthly fees. I love their app, by the way. I am a customer. With up to 20 free checking accounts, you can separate your cash for every project or set up dedicated accounts for things like payroll, taxes, and material costs. Relay makes it super easy to keep tabs on every dollar and know exactly how much money is flowing through your business. You can assign up to 50 debit cards to team members to cover everything from supply orders to coffee runs. You stay in complete control with the ability to set spending limits or freeze cards in seconds. They even have a Relay credit card that you really should check out. It helps tremendously with cash flow. And if you work with an accountant or a bookkeeper, you can assign them secure read-only access to your accounts, so they always have everything they need to keep your books in pristine condition. The best part? Relay is 100% online, so you never have to visit a busy bank branch in the middle of the crazy workday. From depositing checks to creating virtual expense cards, you can do it all from your phone without ever leaving the office or the job site. Get banking built for small businesses. Sign up in 10 minutes at therealjasonduncan.com/relay. That's therealjasonduncan.com/relay. And by the way, I am a customer. They're not just a partner with me on this podcast. I actually use them as I bank with them. So go check them out. therealjasonduncan.com/relay. Relay is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services provided by Thread Bank, member FDIC.
Thanks for listening to our sponsors. Now, back to the show.
So you've got to be playing in the top 1% in the industry, I would imagine. I don't know for sure, but it's got to be top 1%. I can't imagine most or even half of the companies out there are doing anywhere in 8 figures of revenue. So that's great. And then of course the bottom line at 28% is significant. What do you think, though, if you had to look back in your years of experience as an entrepreneur, creating such a successful business and a successful brand, what is the one key that's helped you unlock success more than anything else?
And that's such a loaded question. I don't know if there's one thing, because I'll shift to culture here, because from 2010 to 2016, I didn't understand the importance of culture, and our turnover rate was just absolutely horrible. And that's when we weren't making any money. And I was always in recruiting mode, and I'll tell this story really fast. I went to a Diamondbacks game here in AZ, and because I was always in recruiting mode, I was in the line of Dutch Brothers. And, as a business owner, you're always recruiting and you're always looking for, you kind of know how to spot people, like talented people. People just have that image about them, like the way in which they carry themselves. And there's this lady, taking my order, and she impressed me. And I, went to recruit her and basically pitched her on how much money she would make, because at this time I couldn't brag about culture. I had to brag about how much more money I was paying everybody, because that's all I had, right? That was my selling point. Well, she turned me down, long story short, and she said this. She said, I'm going to stay at Dutch Brothers. I make minimum wage, but I'm going to stay here because the culture is absolutely phenomenal. I was just like, I honestly couldn't understand it. Like why do you care more about culture than money? And, I went home that night and it really hit me, because I said, look, the greediness of it was like, you're telling me I can pay minimum wage or like less than everyone else, and all I have to do is have an amazing culture and I'll save money, So I went back, I put in basketball hoops in the warehouse, I put in massage chairs, I put in soda machines. I just started focusing the next few years on culture. And it's been one of the single greatest things that I've ever done, is focus on culture and put more emphasis on that. And now I have the best, because now I'm paying more and I have a better culture. And so I can recruit in both categories. And, it's been everything for me. And I'd say, and I talked about this on my podcast yesterday, is that I'm not the type of person that can sit down and like listen to you vent for an hour. That's just not it. But you need that person in your culture, because people need to feel like they're a part of a family. And so within the past 2 years, we had a good culture, but we were still having like decent turnover rate. Well, I hired this, my partner, Evan, who is that guy. I call him the teddy bear. If you want to vent for 2 hours for him, he will sit there and engage with you and make you feel like you're his best friend. And he's sincere. It's not an act. And I've watched the buy-in, so as I'm knowing my numbers, and I've invited Evan to come in and help me with, bridge that gap between like, hey, now we have a good culture with events, activities, swag, all that stuff. But now he's like listening to people and getting their buy-in. That's when we jumped another 8%, which when you're doing $24 million in revenue, 8% is a lot of money. It's worth it. And I just encourage people, like, as a business owner, you have to wear all these hats, but you need to know what you're great at and what you're not so great at, and hire for those people.
Now you talked about, when you talk about culture, you talked about you bought basketball hoops and massage chairs and soda machines. But I mean, let's be real. You now know that's not culture. That helps develop it's some of the structure around which culture can be built. But I don't want anybody who's listening to this think that, I just got to put in massage chairs and basketball hoops and I'm going to start making $24 million a year. Like, give us a little bit more insight now that you've built such a phenomenal culture of what it really means to have good culture and how you do it.
Yeah. And I'm glad you pointed that out, because you're right. Some people are dogmatic about that. It's like, I'll just put in a basketball hoop. The basketball hoop, massage chairs, soda machines allowed people to hang out longer after work. And when people hang out longer, they start to communicate and it becomes this family. And like I said, you spend more time at work than you do at home, and you want people to feel appreciated. And so when everyone's, I love when I hear that, our coworkers are together doing football teams or softball teams or kickball teams. Like, now they're spending time together. So when they call out, they're not calling out, like, they're not letting the company down. They're letting their coworker down, who happens to be their manager, and because they know what's going to happen to that route if they call out. So it's just a level to buy in, that much more.
Well, interestingly enough, I know that you've experienced this as a result of what you've done, but I don't know if you know that there's a correlation. And I don't mean to say that you don't know, but culture is one of the indicators for increasing the multiple on evaluation that nobody thinks about. Now, the investment bankers are thinking about it, because we have an investment banker on my team with my mastermind. That's what we do. We help increase people's value of their companies.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that we show them how to do is like, listen, obviously you got to get your finances in order. You got to make sure that your bottom line's high. Like, there are certain strategic things you got to do. But one thing nobody thinks about until we tell them is, hey, improve your culture. Like, work on the next 6 to 12 months, because it doesn't turn on like a switch, but work on really developing culture. You'll get a higher multiple if you have good culture. You could take your company, Green Mango, at 24 million, 20%, 28%, and somebody offered you $60 million, right? What you said, you turn that down. But if you had a terrible culture and everybody hated working there, your turnover, your churn's high, they wouldn't have offered you 60. It might have been 50.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been 40. It might have been 30. It'd have been a lot less, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is congratulations, whether or not you know that that's leading to a higher multiple, people need to understand that you've built a significantly valuable company, not just because of everything you've done financially, but also because of what you've done culturally.
And I appreciate that. When you guys look at these companies, are you just looking at tenure, or are you like, because if you say like, hey, your average tenure is 6 months right now, like let's work on this for the next year, and they get it up to, 9 months, is that a huge increase for you, or what? And it's
tenure, and that's a great question. So tenure is part of it, but it's more about what we define culture as is essentially, if you just put it in easy terms, it's the personality of the company.
Okay.
How does it's the unwritten rules of how the company interacts internally.
And
How does admin work with sales? How does sales work with service? How does service work with operations? Like how do they work? And because if you walk in and you tell everybody siloed in their own little silos, and nobody that marketing people hate the salespeople hate the office. Okay. That's what culture is, the personality of the company. But tenure is a part of that. But tenure is an outcome of a good personality, a good culture.
That's great feedback, man. I appreciate that.
Well, that hopefully you keep doing what you're doing. This is going to be, a couple $100 million company. I mean, because if you're looking at right now, if you take your company at 24 million and growing, and you've already turned down 60 million, well, go buy a few more of these companies, do a roll up of a little bit. Now you can do a 10 to 12x on the service of where you're at now. And you're looking at, you could be pushing 80, $100 million valuation. So you're on the right track, man.
I appreciate that.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations. I love what you're doing. Now, how would you define, Cameron, the word success? And and that's the question I'm asking, and you can start thinking about it, but I want to say a few things before I let you answer.
Yeah.
You and I got introduced, I think, through your booking agent, or somebody reached out to me and said, hey, he wants to be on your show. Yeah. And then you graciously offered me to come on your show, but I think you only record in person in Phoenix, and I wasn't making a trip to Phoenix anytime soon. But I would love to do it, because I think you do it like you take helicopter rides and stuff, and I want to be out there. I want to come do that. But here's my perspective. So here's my perspective. I didn't know what you did financially, but I liked what I saw. It's like, okay, I see this. Yeah. But what I saw was a guy, posting pictures of himself with his nice cars and your helicopter, stuff like that, which is typical what you see. But now that I've met you, you're not that guy.
Oh, thanks, man.
You're not that guy at all. Like, I see somebody that has lots of humility, that leads from a position of strength, but below the surface, which is impressive to me. I like that. I'm not Mormon. I follow Jesus, but I'm not Mormon. So I think we probably have friends. Yeah, I think we have a lot of worldview similarities. Yeah. So I'm impressed by what you're building. So by asking you what your definition of success is, I think it's going to probably, if I had to predict, it's going to be different than what people might think if they just looked at your Instagram, which is not bad. I'm not saying it's bad. I think it's going to be different. So what is success to Cameron?
Success is having a well-balanced life. So everyone has a different balance wheel. You're right. There's 7 to 8 categories: religion, family, finance, hobbies, relationship with your spouse, relationship with your kids. And for me, success is not necessarily being a 10 in each category, but having an even score. So you could be 3 or 4s in each category, but as long as you're balanced, you're just going to have a happier life. And I know that because, like I said, like we've been talking about, I started Green Mango in 2010. I was a young guy, 22 years old. I never worked for anyone else in my whole life. And, I started this company, and 6 years in, I started 5 other service companies, because I thought, I mastered Green Mango, might as well do these other ones. And that showed up to be the biggest mistake. But during that time, I was getting home late. I was not focusing on religion. I wasn't focusing on hobbies. I was 30 pounds overweight, which is a big deal for me. And, I was miserable, man. And that's why I talk about entrepreneurs. But I was doing $10 to $15 million in revenue, and I could have gone out there on Instagram and, I don't know very many people that are doing 15 million in revenue and acted like I was this king, but it's like, no, dude, like I'm inside, like I'm miserable. And I hired this coach that taught me about the balance wheel. And he changed my life because he helped me see that like you have to make time for these things in order to be happy. So that's a long-winded answer for you, but success is having a balanced life.
By that definition, do you consider yourself to be successful?
I'm my biggest critic, but I'm very blessed. Like that's my biggest thing is like I always want more, and I think that's what has led to a lot of my success. Is never like I celebrate the wins, but it's like, and that's one of my biggest complaints with my managers is like, hey, you want it like last month we had our highest revenue in 1 month, right? I was like, hey guys, congratulations, let's go do this, but next month like we can hit even more and let's go. And so I don't celebrate the wins, and so I don't consider myself a successful person, but I consider myself like a blessed person, and I'm always working to be more successful and more balanced,
That's fair.
If that makes
That's
sense.
fair.
But I always want
Yeah,
more, but not in more of like I'm not grateful for what I have. So it's kind of confusing for some people, but I don't know. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I have a similar philosophy. I think I refer to it as results through integrity.
Okay.
The way I look at it is that there's people that only look for results, and they're just hard drivers, and they don't care about the wins, and they just results. I want the next one. And then there's other people that only care about the process, which is what integrity is. It's like doing the right way.
Yeah.
And I think it's both. I think you got to focus on results, but through integrity. So I want you to get the results, but if you're not doing it with integrity, in other words, you're not following the process, you're not doing the things I've told you, you're not showing up on time, you're not in uniform, you're not tucked in, your truck's
Right.
not clean.
Yeah.
Like that's the integrity part. But if you show up on time, your truck's clean and you're tucked in and you're doing things right, but you don't get the results, well, that ain't good either. Like we got to have both. So I think you and I have a very similar philosophy about that success. So if I asked you to put on your coaching hat for a minute and talk to the audience, what would you say is your best piece of advice for entrepreneurs?
I think it would be that, like I said, if you're deep into your business, chances are you're stressed out and you feel like you can't breathe. Like focus on that balance wheel. Like look it up, Google just balance wheel and see what the different categories are. And that's going to help you show up better for, your people.
That success, that balance wheel, that wheel of success or life balance or life wheel, that's a pretty common tool in life coaching.
Yeah.
I have developed a similar thing called the Wheel of Success for business owners, and it's 10 categories.
Nice.
It's scored 10, 0 to 5, and it goes through the same things like you're talking about. And what's interesting, it's like with you said this changed your life. It was a perspective changer, and that's why I use it with my clients, because I want to show them how bumpy the wheel is when they get started, and then over time, the more we work together, the smoother it gets. And it doesn't always get out to number 5. But it gets a heck of a lot smoother, and the ride through life is a lot better when things are balanced.
Okay, so a lot of people fight me on this fact that it's better to be a 2 in all categories than have 5s and 7s here and 2s there. What's your take on the balance wheel?
Well, I think that the further to the outside, because I do 0 through 5 scores,
okay.
So 5 is the outside and then 0 is in the middle. I think the closer to the outside, I think the quality of life is always better.
Okay.
But if you're all at 2s and you're balanced, I think you will feel less stress, but you will want more. And so because your quality of life is not exactly where you want it to be. So I believe we should aim for the outer rim as much as possible, but I would prefer them to be 3s all the way around rather than have 5s in one category and 4s in the other.
Yeah. Love it.
All right, man. Well, listen, I want people to reach out to you. So I want people to go follow you on Instagram. It's C Bawden, Bawden, CBAWDEN on Instagram. You can check them out. And then it's greenmangopest.com. They do have a phenomenal brand, and it's easy to see and remember. Black trucks and the green letters. I mean, it's very good. And if you're in the Phoenix area, I don't know what other areas you serve, but I'm sure there's going to be something he could give to give listeners a little discount on something if they listen to the Root of All Success. You have an offer or something you want to make to everybody who's listening in the Phoenix area?
Yeah. So we'll always take care of that first initial flesh out for free. That's usually $299. We'll do it free. And we want you to experience, who we are and what we do, because once you see it, you'll be absolutely blown away. Like it truly is a different type of service than you're used to.
All right. And how would they get access to that? They just need to reach out to somebody specifically and give them a code word.
We can post we can post like a promo on there, like the root of all success, and then we can add it to our system. So if you want to do that, I'm more than happy to do that. I'd love to.
So when you reach out to Green Mango Pest at greenmangopest.com, just put in the root of all success as a promo code, and you get that first service for free. Saves you $300. So this is a good dude right here. And I think, tell us a little bit about the podcast, because podcast listeners like to listen to other cool podcasts. Tell us a little bit about that. That'll be kind of the final thing we talk about today.
Yeah. So, and as you can see, like I've just kind of stayed in my shell, and my mentor, Tommy Mello, the owner of A1 Garage Doors, really pushed me about a year and a half ago. He said, look, you need to double down on your personal brand, and you have something to talk about. Like, you have something to share. You need to help other entrepreneurs. It's one of your, duties is to give back. And so he challenged me to start a podcast, which is completely pushed me out of my comfort zone. And that's why I hired an agency to book me on as many podcasts as they can to tell my story. And then I started my own. Actually, there's 2 podcasts. So there's one that I do with my business partner, and that's all about like the real life success. I don't, like, if we're having a bad week, you're going to hear about it. We're not going to sugarcoat it and act like we're, these great people, because we're still making tons and tons of mistakes, right? So I love that podcast. It's more about the business. And then I wanted to do one that was a little bit more fun and different. So you mentioned I have a helicopter. Obviously, I thought, hey, this would be awesome and completely different to fly people around the valley and interview them about their story. So, I mean, I've interviewed people that have, ran billion-dollar companies, to some that were, in jail for 13 years in prison, where, they were the ringleader, the shot caller, they call him. And it's just fun, drug addicts. And so that's, we release every other week on that platform. And, it's just a fun podcast, and you get to see the Valley of Arizona.
All right. So what are the names of the shows, so everybody knows what they are?
So the Premium Mindset is the business one. And then Flying High with Cam is the helicopter one.
Flying High?
Yep, with Cam.
Flying High with Cam. Well, I need to figure out how to get to make an excuse to get to Phoenix and get on that helicopter with you. I've only been on one helicopter my whole life, and a friend of mine, he has his own helicopter, and he lived down the street. And he called me up one Saturday mornings a couple of years ago. He said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm just sitting on the front porch, sipping coffee, enjoying my morning." He goes, "You want to ride in the helicopter?" So I rode my motorcycle down the street, got in the helicopter, and then as soon as we got up in the air, it's the coolest thing ever. If anybody's not done this. He starts circling, and he goes, "Hey, that's your house." I'd never seen my house from the sky, so I'm taking pictures of my house. And then the next day, we were talking to my neighbors, and they were like, "Hey, were you guys outside and the helicopters going around? What was that all about?" And I was like, "Well, actually, let me show you pictures of your house."
Dope. That's cool, man. So you loved it?
Yeah, it was cool. And you know what? I forget. I did another one. We went to Vegas, I think a year ago, and we did the Grand Canyon tour on the helicopter. That was not as cool because we were stuffed in a hot helicopter with 6 other people.
Yeah.
But still cool nonetheless.
Nice, man. I love it. I'm actually, yeah. All right, I was going to go down a tangent, but I won't.
Well, listen, everybody, check out Cameron Bawden and at greenmangopest.com. It's C Bawden on Instagram. Cameron, it's been such a pleasure to meet you, and I can't thank you enough for being on the show, and also want to congratulate you on the tremendous amount of success financially that you've achieved, and also how you've balanced that out with making sure that your family is still the most important thing. And so congrats, man. You're doing good stuff, and I wish you the best of success continued.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, everybody, there you go. There's another very successful entrepreneur about his journey to success. And what's interesting about doing this show is when you get to talk to people, you have this preconceived idea based on what you've seen of them or heard of them. And then you meet them, you get to verify whether or not what you thought was true or not. Well, that's the same thing in every bit of life. And I think what we need to do is we need to take the opportunities to connect with people. And if nothing else, like if you don't have to do a podcast, but connect with somebody. The next time you're at a restaurant, connect with someone, talk to someone. If you're on a bus, if you're on a plane, if you're at a train station, connect with someone, talk to them, because you are one conversation away from a totally different life. This guy, Cameron, went and started working for a pest control company because somebody said, hey, you should come do sales. That changed his life forever. Then he had a business coach that he hired that showed him this wheel of success thing, and that changed his life forever. You're one conversation, one contact, one person away from a totally different life. Don't miss out on that because you're not taking action. So go out there and take action. Thank you for following me on this show. Thanks for listening to The Root of All Success. Please make sure you tune in again next week when I talk with yet another very successful entrepreneur about his or her journey to success. Listen to the outro guy. He's going to tell you a couple things you want to listen to. But as always, I'm the real Jason Duncan, and Jesus is King.
Thank you for listening to another edition of The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, visit therootofallsuccess.com to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Follow Jason on social media at The Real Jason Duncan. See you again next time here on The Root of All Success.